Open Boat is a short story written by Stephen Green. He was born in New Jersey on November 1st, 1871. He was the last of the 14 siblings. After his preliminary education, he wanted to set a literary career for himself. He began freelancing writer and started working for New York Tribune. He was a war correspondent, so as a part of his job, he had to travel to Cuba and he started his journey from US to Cuba in an open boat crossing Atlantic Ocean with the three others. The story covers the ordeal faced by this group while maneuvering the ocean with turbulent ocean. The story tells us the explorative attitude, struggle for survival, keeping the solidarity, and face the conflict on between man and nature. Story, the story begins with four men. None of them knew the color of the sky. Their eyes glanced level and were fastened upon the waves that swept toward them. These waves were the hue of slate, save for the tops, which were foaming white, and all of the men knew the color of the sea. The horizon narrowed and widened and dipped the rose, and all times its edge was jagged with waves that seemed thrust up in points like rocks. The open boat, mainly from the point of view of the correspondent, based Stephen Crane himself. The first part introduces the four characters the correspondent, the captain, the cook, and the oiler, Billy, who is physically the strongest and the only one in the story referred to by name. The four men are survivors of a shipwreck which occurred before the beginning of the story and are drifting at sea in small dinghy. The moods of the foreman fluctuate from anger at their desperate situation to growing sympathy for one another and the sudden realization that nature is indifferent to their fates. The men become fatigued and bicker with one another. Nevertheless, the oiler and the correspondent take turns rowing towards shore while the cook bails water to keep the boat afloat. When they see a lighthouse on the horizon, their hope is tempered with the realization of the danger of trying to reach it. The correspondent and the oiler continue to take turns rowing while the others sleep fitfully during the night. The correspondent then notices a shark swimming near the boat, but he doesn't seem to be bothered by it as one would expect. Finally, the foreman's resolution to abandon the floundering dinghy they have occupied 4 hours for hours to swim ashore. As they begin the long swim to the beach, Billy the oiler, the strongest of the four, swims ahead of the force. The captain advances towards the shore while still holding onto the boat, and the cook uses a surviving oar. The correspondent is trapped by a local current but is eventually able to swim on. After three of the men safely reach the shore and are met by a group of rescuers, they find Billy dead, his body washed up on the shore. Open Boat is a short story by American author Stephen Crane. First published in 1897, it was based on Crane's experience of surviving a shipwreck off the coast of Florida earlier that year while traveling to Cuba to work as a newspaper correspondent. The story, though it is personal experience of the author, is a fictional tale. The highlight of the story is fight against the survival, the bondage of friendship in different times, the team spirit, and coordination to work together, a feeling of sadness